to Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about The White Lotus Season 3 on HBO Max. A fun fact about this show, it was initially slated to be a limited series, but given its acclaim, here we are now in Season 3. And it is an anthology show. Given each season, there is a little bit of carryover between characters, which I'll get into in a little bit. But essentially, each season is set in a new location at one of these White Lotus resorts, which is really the connecting thread between seasons. And the show is a little bit formulaic. We can kind of know that we can expect a dead body. We're going to reverse engineer throughout the season, try to figure out who the body is, who the culprit is, and this formula has worked very well. Mike White, of course, is the creator behind The White Lotus. He has said this season is going to be bigger, it's going to be better. He's also said that this season will focus on Eastern religion, spirituality, and death. We've already had a taste of all of those things here in episode 1. And before we get more into it, please be sure you do like this video and subscribe, especially if you like videos where I talk about dark TV shows. You are in the right place. And I will be covering The White Lotus Season 3 every week, so make sure you stop by and see what I have to say. Episode 1 did not disappoint. We got an absolutely gorgeous, visually stunning, beautiful cinematography in this new location set in Thailand. We also got quite a bit of table setting and world building for what we can expect in this Thailand location at this new White Lotus resort, and a pretty solid introduction to our entire cast of characters. We've got a friend group, we've got a family, we've got a couple, we meet some of the staff. And right away, I think we're able to find this sense of comfort and familiarity, given that we do know what to expect with the show. And yes, we just kind of need to learn these characters, what pushes their buttons, what are their motivations, who are they, and why are they really there? And while we do know the premise and the flow of the show, I think the most fun part is really coming every week and trying to figure out who's the culprit, who's the body, what other factors are at play, and how are they going to twist this and surprise us? And given we did open with a body floating in the water within the first few minutes of the show, that does bring us right back to Season 2, of course, and gets us right into the mystery. Really quick, too, I would like to shout out an absolute banger of a song I had never heard before. It's called Made in Thailand by Carrie. Something about it, just a different sound of music that I normally listen to, and I am immediately going to be going to the White Lotus official playlist, and I'm hoping that that one is on there because what a banger. Love the way that it set the tone for this episode and just gave us kind of a cool feel. So as we open this episode, we see Zion, who we can assume is the son of Belinda because he's, of course, mentioning that his mom is there. Now, Belinda was one of the carryover characters from Season 1. She worked at the spa in Maui, and she kind of got scammed a little bit by Jennifer Coolidge's character, Tanya, who, spoiler alert if you have not watched Season 2, was the body from Season 2. She is no longer with us. So Belinda actually had this connection to Tanya, Jennifer Coolidge's character, back in Season 1. And there is another connection to Tanya here in Season 3 because her ex-husband Greg is here in Thailand, living in a house up on a hill with his model girlfriend Chloe. Now, is he living off of her fortune and in hiding? Is there some sort of suspicion perhaps surrounding him where the authorities could potentially be hunting for him for the role he did play in Tanya's death? All of that is to be determined, but it was kind of a surprise. They were not talking about the return of this character. We knew Belinda was coming back, but not Tanya's ex, Greg. So now that we know Belinda is at this new spa, she's staying there as more of a guest to kind of learn the wellness program that they have so she can bring it back to the other White Lotus resort. But yes, her son Zion is there, and I did double check on IMDb. They have the same last name, so safe to say, yes, it is Belinda's son Zion. But he's in this meditative yoga session, and all of a sudden, the monkeys actually kind of give us this visual clue. And by the way, the animals, the monkeys, the lizards, all very cool for establishing this environment and location. But we start to hear gunshots, and at first they kind of ignore them and, tune out your surroundings, that whole type of jazz. But once there is some glass shattered over there, then the meditation teacher just kind of runs away, and Zion goes towards the noise. He's in the water looking towards the shooter. And then a dead body floats towards him. And in the meantime, he's been like, hey, please make sure my mom is okay, saying a prayer for her. And then the dead body comes by. I am going to say right now, I don't think it is his mom, Belinda. That would be far too obvious and much too early here in the season. So just in ruling out one person who I don't think it is their body, I don't think it's his mom. If it was his mom, he would have ran towards her, embraced her, maybe even checked to see if she was still alive. But my initial question too with this body is, yes, it does seem like this shooting that's happening at the hotel does seem pretty close by. But would there have been enough time for this body to get shot, land in the water, and float all the way towards him at this time? I'm not sure the exact proximity, but could it be that this body is not even related to the shooting, but was there sooner, and maybe the shooting is a way to cover something else up as well? At the end of the video, I'm going to go into my theories as to who I think the shooter could be, who I think the body could be, and yes, it is very early, so this is all pure theorizing and speculation, but you know what? That's what the show is here for, and that's mostly what I'm going to be talking about all season long. Let's go ahead and meet some of the other characters that we are introduced to here in episode 1. And by the way, episode 1 is called Same Spirits, New Forms, and I also think that's kind of a fun nod to the show in general because they are carrying over some of these characters from prior seasons, but also introducing us to a whole new world as well. The formula of the show in general is just so smart, and Mike White is great. By the way, if you did not know this, he was actually a contestant on Survivor back a few seasons ago. I feel like it was sometime around 2020. Very entertaining to watch. He made it pretty far in the season and just such a genius for creating this show and bringing it to us. So thanks, Mike White. I think one of the cast members I was most excited to see this season was Walton Goggins. I love him as Uncle Baby Billy in The Righteous Gemstones and of course as the ghoul in Fallout very recently. He's playing Rick Hatchett, which I do think will fall into this LBH category. As Chloe the model tells Rick's girlfriend Chelsea, he is an LBH loser back home, and most of these white men in Thailand who are going bald are considered in that category, having these midlife type of crises. So I do think that's funny because Chloe also considers Tanya's ex Greg to be in that LBH category as well. So every time we see an LBH this season, I will be calling them out, of course. Now, Rick and Timothy, who's part of the Ratliff family, who we're going to talk about in a second, kind of get into it on the boat when we're first getting introduced to our characters because Rick is smoking and Timothy does not like that. So we can tell there is some early tension between these two characters, and will be interesting to see if that does end up playing into this whole mystery of it all. Chelsea is much younger than her boyfriend Rick, which is quite apparent, and he seems to be very annoyed with her and almost everything she does. Like when the server is there pouring the wine and wants her to taste it, she doesn't know this. I mean, she's probably dating the guy for the money, not to stereotype, but I mean, you know, it's probably a thing, and she may not be as well versed in terms of etiquette, and so he has to tell her that, yeah, they want you to taste it, so she does, loves it, and, you know, keeps wanting a nice heavy pour there. So Chelsea is younger, you know, she may not be quite as upscale as some of these other guests. She's really more the arm candy of Rick. But she makes a comment here in this first episode that kind of stuck with me. She says, "I'm going to help you get your joy back, even if it kills me." Now, this could be a complete red herring, or perhaps Chelsea ends up being the body floating in the river or shot in this hotel shootout situation. But also, there's something else going on with Rick. He gets introduced to the owner here, but it seems like he was actually there to see her husband, who seems like some prominent figure from back in the States, but unfortunately he's sick, he's in a hospital in Bangkok, so he's not there. What exactly did Rick want with him? Is this some sort of like long lost father situation? Is this related to a business deal of some kind? Not sure yet on this motivation, but obviously there is some connection between him and the owner of this resort. Will the owner's wife somehow end up in the middle of this skirmish and maybe perhaps she ends up being the one floating at the end? We will see. All right, so the Ratliff family. First of all, Jason Isaacs. I adore him. He played the villain in the OA on Netflix. one of my favorite shows of all time. There are 2 seasons of it. It did get canceled too early, and there is still a chance it could come back for more. However, I still recommend you watching it. It is one of those shows that is mind-bending, very twisty, so even though it didn't get the conclusion it deserved, there is still time, and if you like Jason Isaacs as much as I do, then you must absolutely go watch the OA on Netflix. But we've got him here playing Timothy Ratliff. He's the patriarch of this family. They're from the South. They are legacy Duke, legacy UNC Chapel Hill, and they've got 3 kids. I'm just going to say nice and early, I would not be shocked if one of these kids somehow was either played into the shooting of it all or the body. However, I don't think it will be one of the sons, given back in season 2, there was the storyline with the rich entitled son that did end up causing a death, and I can't see them revisiting that. So if I'm going with one of the Ratliff kids somehow being involved, I'm going with the daughter, Piper. She's there because she's doing her senior thesis on Buddhism and wants to interview a monk, and her family made it an entire trip. Does she want her family there with her? Could this be some sort of thing where perhaps she just gets to her last straw with her family being overbearing and involved in making all of the decisions for their kids? Could this put her over the edge, and in a big twist of irony, she goes on a mass shooting when she's supposed to be there for this Buddhism study? That would be shocking, and I will not rule that out yet. Can we also say how gross and disturbing it is? We've got Patrick Schwarzenegger here playing Saxon. Not only is he completely gross, icky, and over-sexualized, but also there is this sense of incest, and the fact he's calling his sister hot, the fact that she might be a virgin, and then the whole hotel room scene with him and his brother Lachlan, ew, 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 ew. I cannot say ew enough. It is just gross. And yeah, he's very attractive. I did not mind seeing that scene where he was in the bathroom, but something about it is gross. And I get the sense that Lachlan, he may be gay, and perhaps that's why he and Piper were going to share the room, and then Saxon had to make that disgusting comment about them being related and having fully formed genitals. But I saw it totally different, as in the sister and brother are friends, they get along, they don't want to be anywhere near their very strange, incestuous, over-sexualized brother. So, I don't know. I just got such ick from all of that, and I don't think Saxon will be involved in any sort of scandal here. I just think he's going to be there for some sort of shock factor, and just to continue this ick, 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 because ew, 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 that is the biggest part of what I got from this character so far. All right, let's move on to the friend group. And speaking of just this incredible cast and shouting out some of the actors I love here, Carrie Coon, she's from The Leftovers on HBO. What an incredible show that was. Talk about another mind-bending show. Love her. She is here playing Lori in this group of 3 women in their mid-40s on a victory tour. First of all, I am in my mid-40s, and there's nothing more I would love than a victory tour. Who knows, maybe I will take my own. But these 3 women, despite the fact they've known each other since they were 9 years old, you can tell there is some sort of tension, some sort of jealousy, competitiveness to it all. So we've got Kate, Jacqueline, and Lori. Kate is played by Leslie Bibb, and you can tell she's very competitive with her friend Jacqueline, played by Michelle Monaghan, who is from Bad Monkey. Loved her in that show. But she's a TV star. Everybody knows her. Everybody recognizes her, and she's essentially treating her friends to this big trip. And then, Kate says something like, oh, but I'll pay for some of my treatments. Okay. I mean, you can tell there's obviously some sort of insecurity there if they're even bringing up the money of it all in the first place. But Lori, you can tell that she's a little bit of a third wheel, a little bit on the outskirts, maybe not quite as successful as the other 2, not out there talking about whatever plastic surgery, maintenance, procedures that she's doing. Kind of a regular woman out there working in the world with her family, and probably comparing herself to these other 2 women. They are in their middle life, which is a time when people start to reflect on their lives, the choices they've made. I detect this undercurrent of rage, and it would not surprise me if perhaps Lori is involved in this mass shooting, or I don't know, they get assigned this wellness guy, Valentine. Could it be the type of thing where maybe these women are married or in relationships and they end up having some sort of little torrid affair, threesome, I don't know, with this guy, Valentine, and they one of them either gets jealous or don't want their partners to find out, and maybe it's a staff member floating in the water at the end, and it's Valentine, and these three women perhaps have something to do with that. I'd imagine we're going to see quite a bit of drama and competition amongst these women, so something to keep an eye out for. Then we've got our model friend Chloe, who meets Chelsea at the bar. They decide they're going to get drunk and piss together. Again, recapping, they talk about the LBH, loser back home, white male balding type of guy here who apparently are very prevalent there in Thailand, whether they're living there or vacationing there. But these two seem like they're going to get into some shenanigans as well, and perhaps they end up drinking and getting into some trouble they can't get out of, and maybe they're involved and end up working together. I've got to think that this woman, Chloe, will probably not be a victim. That would be far too obvious, especially given that Greg did play a hand in his wife's Tanya's death back in season 2. So I would imagine it's more maybe they discover that he was guilty of killing his wife, and perhaps they plot to kill him and bring it back around full circle to tie into something from a prior season. And then we meet our staff. The staff also plays a pretty big role in this series in general. In fact, back in season 1, one of the staff members did turn out to be the dead body. So it will also be interesting whether or not this season it is a guest, it is a staff member, or are they going to double down and give us 2 bodies? Because like I said, maybe there is a floater here in this body of water, but maybe there are also other victims, or maybe one main victim with this shootout. Given all of the bullets that we heard, hopefully this is really not a horrific mass tragedy where like everybody is dead. So it'll be fascinating to see exactly how this turns out, and if the noise was worse than the actual victimology of it all. We already mentioned Belinda. Of course, she's there to learn these treatments from another White Lotus, and she is there with her son Zion. I don't think Belinda will end up being the one who gets killed, and obviously her son is not involved in the shooting or is not a victim. So I think we can mark those 2 safe. We have Gaitak and Mook. Gaitak is the security guy, and Mook is a tour guide there. We see her talking to these other kind of badass guys, and maybe perhaps her involvement with them gets her into some trouble, and, Gaitak ends up saving her. Either way, they do a good job of infusing the staff in here with the guests, and the staff end up really being some of these like kind of comedic micro moments. We've got this other lady, Pam, who's telling Saxon about the poison fruits at one point, and then I got myself thinking, is this Saxon floating in the water from like eating some of this toxic fruit? Why bring up the toxic fruit? However, it could also just be to show the absolute entitlement and nonchalance and ego of this character Saxon, who I think we all already hate and wouldn't mind if he ended up dead. But again, I have a feeling it's probably not him. And the owner of the resort, as I mentioned, her husband is a prominent figure, but he is sick in Bangkok. But she also appears to be quite enamored with Jacqueline, who is our TV star guest. And it was kind of funny at the beginning how she shoves off Fabian, who's the general manager, and says, hey, you need to wait for these people to get there so I can greet them because I'm not ready yet. And it's like she tells him to have them just kind of cruise around the bay or the harbor or whatever. And I mean, is it really that important that she's there greeting her? And is this woman so important that they're going to actually hold off the arrival of their guests? I thought that was very strange. And I wonder if somehow this owner of the resort does come into play. In season 1, like I said, it was an employee who was the dead body. In season 2, spoiler alert again, it was Tanya, Jennifer Coolidge's character. So who is the body floating in the water here in season 3? And is it 100% related to this shooting incident that we are hearing? Or is it there from before and perhaps this is related to some type of cover-up? Like I said, as far as the body goes, I'm going to say it's definitely not Belinda. We know it's not Zion because he's there and he discovers the body. So who else could it be? If it's a guest, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe it could be Jacqueline. They're setting her up to be this unlikable, famous type of woman who just appears to be so happy, so kind, treating all of her friends well. I've got to guess there's more under the surface. We're going to learn a lot more about her, and perhaps she's kind of a bad guy and her friends end up taking her out. Or it's our girl Lori who takes her out, and perhaps she ends up going on the shootout and then taking out her friend Kate as well. As I mentioned, what if it's a hotel staffer and it's this guy Valentine who gets assigned to be the health mentor of the 3 women friends? There's just something about this friend group that has me thinking, I don't know. I mean, all of these people equally who we're introduced to have just as much of a chance of being either the victim or the perpetrator. So at this point, again, we are kind of just throwing things out there, but something about that friend group, keeping them high up on my list of suspects. But then there's one of the biggest literal sleepers of all, who I did not really go into here, Victoria Ratliff. Literally a sleeper, literally falling asleep at the table during dinner. Now, does she have some sort of a drug problem? She is this wife of a powerful man who, by the way, someone is doing this expose article on in the Wall Street Journal over some business deal from a former partner. So obviously there's also some kind of scandal there, which I imagine we'll get into. But Victoria just seems like this Southern mom. She went to Chapel Hill. She's rooting her son on to go to Chapel Hill as well. And obviously within this family dynamic, there's quite a bit of strife over the Duke or the Chapel Hill. It will be interesting to see what their son Lachlan ends up choosing. But something about Victoria, she seems almost too laid back, almost too much like we're not supposed to be focusing a lot on her, a little bit too nice. If she was the person to be a perpetrator, what would the motive be? I don't think it's that her son is going to decide to go to Duke. Mom's not going to be out there killing her kids. Could it be that whatever this business deal was with her husband perhaps is going to shine a poor light on her family and she doesn't want it exposed or wants to get ahead of it somehow? Or could Victoria be the body that floats by Zion? It would be pretty unexpected because as of right now, doesn't seem like she's bad, doesn't seem like there's any reason, but perhaps something more comes to the surface and maybe she was involved with whatever this scandal is that's going to come out in the newspaper and her husband kills her. I mean, you guys, we have a whole season ahead of us. We've got theories that are ripe for the picking. So I would love if you drop into the comments and let me know, what are your thoughts so far based on this first episode? Do you think they did a good job introducing us and giving us a little to nibble on in terms of who we think could be the perpetrator, who we think could be the victim? Are there going to be even more victims given this could be a potential mass shooting event? Which, always hate to watch that type of thing unfold, but I'd imagine Mike White has a pretty solid plan here. I would love it if you could give this video a like, hit the subscribe button, and stick with me for the entire 3rd season of The White Lotus. I'll be here every week with a video on Mondays, and I do like to talk about other dark TV shows as well, covering Severance on Apple TV+, Paradise on Hulu, School Spirits on Paramount+, and lots of other great TV shows are coming here in 2025, so stay tuned with me for more TV talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back again soon. Media Melanie. Clicking off.